Alrighty, everybody, welcome back to Culz Reviews Deep Dives. We got a couple familiar faces you guys should recognize if you guys have kept up with the channel. We got Jor-El and Nolan joining us today as we talk Young Guns 2. I thought it was kind of the proper time to discuss it since the real Ollie Roberts passed away December of 1950. Sort of, I guess, timely type of movie, and we brought Nolan on. He's an actor, and of course, Jor-El's an actor. He actually played Billy the Kid for National Geographic, so who
Nice.
better to have than a Billy the Kid, right? Plus, Jor-El's really fun to talk to. We've had some great conversations, as with Nolan. But how are you guys doing today?
Doing well. Yeah, it's a beautiful evening here in LA. It's dark already. December.
It's dark already there. I was like, it's dark already here too. Yeah, it's even funnier though too because well, I live in Las Cruces, right? I live in New Mexico near Old Mesilla, so see all that Billy Kid stuff all the time. It's just yeah.
Well, so Jor-El, for anyone that maybe doesn't know about you, do you want to give a little brief bio of yourself and some of the stuff you've been able to do?
Yeah. Hi guys. I'm Jor-El Vaasborg. I originally lived. I'm from Monterey, up in Northern California, but ended up going down to UCLA to study acting, and then the first audition that I ever had after I graduated was for this untitled National Geographic project about Billy the Kid, and somehow I booked it, and we shot for a week, and then it came out, and then I found out, as we were shooting, that it was in line with the story. We were telling the story of Billy the Kid, but we were also telling the story of Randy as well, who found this tintype, which was one of the few photos that had been authenticated of him. So that was a really unique experience to be able to tell the story of Billy the Kid, but then also tell it in unison with this true story that was also happening, which is what happens in the documentary. And since then, I stuck around in LA and I've worked as a performer and actor in film and TV. I've done some voiceover work for Netflix, a couple other little shows in the Disney Plus movie. So a couple of things here and there. And I also have a bunch of other artistic pursuits and passions. I play music, I do photography, rock climb, a bunch of fun outdoor stuff as well. So yeah, so Keegan connected with me after he saw my performance in Billy the Kid New Evidence, and he's brought me on a couple times, which I'm appreciative of. So it's nice to be back.
Yeah, no, it's always good to have you back. We definitely have to do one on Free Solo, though, about Alex Honnold and the rock climbing,
Rock
because
climbing.
that's
Do that.
it's such a good documentary, but I'm also afraid of heights, so it's kind of terrifying at the same time.
Yeah.
But I love rock climbing. I know when we had you on, I don't know if it was on our previous deep dive on Young Guns or if it was your interview where you said the director said this is not Young Guns when you did something, right?
He did. There was a moment when Billy gets revenge on, I can't remember who it is now, but when we were shooting, I'm hiding behind these like stacks, and I jump out and fire my gun. And then we were doing one take, and I kind of improv this thing where I like spit on the body, and came over to me and said, "No, you're not doing this. This isn't Young Guns. You're not that crazy."
Yeah, no, that's definitely something I think we talked about too last time was just Emilio's take on Young Guns or on Billy in Young Guns, and he changed it for Young Guns too because he didn't like it. And we'll definitely get into that, but I like him better in this one than I did Young Guns 1. Nolan, for anyone that, missed out on Crow 2024, because that was a fun show. Do you want to tell people?
Show.
Yeah. Do you want to
But-
tell people about yourself and some of your acting?
Yeah, I am similar to Jor-El over here, except not as accomplished, probably or skilled. But
Yes.
it's one of those things that also an aspiring actor and general artist of sorts. I think it's funny. I was actually gonna say, for those that don't put the rock climbing in the art category, it is an art. But yeah, it's one of those things that no, for the most part, same thing. Just aspiring actor. I've done lot of fan film stuff or whatever down here with my Ghostbusters crew that Keegan's done some cool stuff with, and yeah, man, just looking for other work too all the time. Yeah, it's one of those things that I'm gonna actually work on trying to break into the voice acting scene a little bit here too. Yeah, so it's one of those things that a lot of same, I guess, shared not really hobbies, but personalities, I guess, right? But yeah, it's just one of those things, kind of doing that, and then I guess like not random side hobby, but more of a like main job or whatever. Is I also do tattoos, so
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, so it's funny how we all like all artistic people somehow kind of congregate in the same spaces somehow. So
Artistic, you want to be able to express it, right? Everyone has a different conduit for that. It's funny about like tattoos, man. If I wasn't an actor, I'd have full sleeves.
See, and that's the thing is like I wonder if it's gonna hurt me, right? Because obviously, like I'm all I got a little here and there or whatever. But
on it, I see so many different. I mean, it kind of depends on your type too, because sometimes they want people with tattoos, right? As long as you have clearances for them, right? It's people with tattoos. Technically, you need to have I don't know if it's a note or if it's some sort of like paperwork or something, because if someone's created a tattoo and put it on your arm, it's their artwork. And if it's going to be displayed in a commercial way, then they might need to basically sign a release for it to be able to do that.
Okay. So I'll remember that. But I mean, I guess I can kind of skirt that for at least one arm, because I'd say 95% of the tattoos that I have are all my own artwork. They've just been tattooed by other people. So.
And they can cover stuff up with makeup. It's one of those things where I have some ideas for some tattoos, and at some point the day is going to come. I'm going to wake up and go, all right,
today's the day.
But it hasn't happened yet.
Well, I'll tell you what, that first one that you get, you'll be like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. And then like, you'll be like, 2 weeks after that, you're like, maybe I could get another one. And then it just grows from there. And then it's once the bug bites you, it gets you, man. And then then it turns into what happened? Jor-El's got a whole sleeve now. I don't know, got Cynthia tattooed on your neck. Maybe I don't know. It's leads to wild places sometimes. Let me tell you.
Or like I hear of like maybe this is just me going on Reddit at like 2 a.m. but people who get like create weird infections from tattoos sometimes, and they're like, oh God, why did I get this?
Oh, then that I was like, with that I can tell you is if I'm being honest, like when people get tattoos, right, it's a little bit of like give and take. And when I say give and take, I mean it like, yes, your like artist person has to be clean and sterile and kind of follow like processes and all that kind of stuff, but also at the same time, like as we'll call it the consumer, right, or the customer, you have to understand that you have to like take care of it to some degree. You can't just go wild and do whatever you want, because one, either it's going to look terrible, or two, it's going to get infected. Because like realistically, when you go home with a nice big tattoo all down your arm or whatever, that's an open wound. Like it's a one giant open wound. And sometimes people legitimately like don't take care of it, or they want to go get in the hot tub or whatever, and you're like, that's going to get infected. And then it just gets all gross, and that's when you start seeing the gross stuff on Reddit, and you get in that rabbit hole, and it's like, well, it was, I'm sure this guy told you to, to not go in a hot tub or something, and you said, whatever, I'm not going to listen to him. Or, you know what I mean? It's one of those things, sometimes people do get them from, like, well, he tattooed me on his kitchen table, so it wasn't the cleanest of environments, right? It was right next to the Thanksgiving turkey, I guess.
Yeah, no, I'll have to send you. There's this guy I follow on Facebook and YouTube. He does little shorts. He's a tattoo artist, but he always does like little funny shorts about like the weirdest things people say to him.
Oh,
or like they're trying to like eat while he's like tattooing, and he's like, "Can you not?" And he does it so like deadpan.
Well, like for me, like I don't. As long as you're not like, you've seen the second Ninja Turtle movie, right?
Which one? The newer second or
no,
the
sorry,
90s?
The original ones. Okay, let's
okay.
The original best ones. Rubber suit Ninja Turtles. Okay, any day of the week over CGI, whatever. I don't care. Don't at me. Anyways, but there's a part where Mikey's eating. I think he's eating a Butterfinger. So he's eating a Butterfinger, and Raph is sitting next to him. But Mikey's like, like chewing on it or whatever. And like he turns and looks. He goes, "Hey, Mikey, can you eat a little louder? I can still hear out of this one." And then he like leans in and goes, like right next to him. Like again, he's like, "Ah, come on!" as long as people aren't doing that, like I don't care if you want to eat or whatever while I'm tattooing, absolutely. Mostly because like you don't want people passing out or falling out or anything like that too, because that happens. Like you might feel fine all of a sudden, and then out of nowhere your stuff drops, and then you got people passing out or like seizing in the chair, and you're like, what is going on? Like, oh god. And yeah, it's because it's
basic play out of me.
Yeah, well, it's crazy because I was like, what? I don't know what possesses people to like go to a tattoo on an empty stomach, or you know what I mean? Like, because like realistically, like at the end of the day, like people don't understand that sometimes that's about as like close to a like surgical procedure as you can kind of get sometimes, without it being like an actual like surgical procedure. It's like you got to kind of prepare yourself a little bit here. You want to be hydrated, maybe bring some water with you, something. For me, like personally, I love eating Twizzlers. I'll eat like a whole pack of Twizzlers through like a whole tattoo. You know what I mean? Just so I make sure.
Before a medical procedure is I eat.
Yeah, that's you've never been in the OR, just crushing Twizzlers, man. But yeah, no, it's one of those things that yeah. So people do wild things like that or whatever, and it's like what I don't know what possesses people to do stuff like that. Now, I'm not saying maybe bring like a whole 3-course meal or whatever of like spaghetti and a whole bunch of other stuff, but like if you want to come and maybe eat a chicken sandwich or something, like just don't lean over and try to get mayo in your tattoo or something. But yeah, other than that, man, like it's cool, but also some people are weird like that, where they have problems with people eating and all, you know what I mean? Like some people are like, this guy's chewing too loud or whatever, and he's like, I don't know how you hear that. He's like 15 feet away, but he's just. Or, sometimes people just eat like cows or whatever, which I can see is not great for a lot of people. So,
yeah, everyone has a different level they can focus at, right? Some people are good at tuning things out, and some people are really not.
See, you come for Billy the Kid, you stay for the tattoo etiquette, and that's how we get you here on the deep dive episodes. Yeah, no, that's what makes these ones fun. Could we kind of go off the rails? Jor-El knows he's been on Whiplash. He knew how that one went.
At some point, we'll talk about the movie 3 a.m.
At some point, we'll get to it. Nolan, obviously from New Mexico and stuff like that. Tell us your first like interactions with Billy the Kid since you weren't on our Young Guns 1 deep dive.
Let's see here. So because I do, like I said, I live in Las Cruces or whatever, right? New Mexico, it's like one of the second largest cities or whatever, right? Like New Mexico only has realistically like 3 cities that's even considered to be a city, which would be Albuquerque, Las Cruces, and Santa Fe, right? But it is one of those things, like it's realistically, it's not a big place. There's mostly a lot of, country, desert, land, all that kind of stuff. Like this is not a very populated state. And if it is, it's in Albuquerque, Cruces, or Santa Fe, right? But overall, it's one of those things. Like I remember being a kid, right, and visiting my grandparents here because that's where they've lived for however long, right? But it's one of those things, like they have Old Mesilla, right? And I'm sure you guys have heard that word used before. But it's like the historic part of town, right? Like it's one of those ones that like you go there and everything is all old and wooden and like adobe hut type kind of stuff or whatever, like all the older buildings and all that. But yeah, there's some like historic sites and stuff around there, and like there's a little Billy the Kid museum and all that kind of stuff when you go down there. And I remember, getting taken to that by my grandpa or whatever, right? When I was a kid, it's like, oh man, that's cool. Like, here, Billy Kid did this and all this kind of other stuff. And so it's like little historic sites like that. And that was, I think, I can't remember how old I was, maybe 10 or something like that. But that was like about the, first time getting taken down there and going to walk around and see all the old stuff and all the cool kind of lore and all the stuff that they have like up in Mesilla. So yeah, it's been pretty cool.
Well, Las Cruces has one of our main characters from tonight, Pat Garrett's grave. He's buried out there. Have you been to it?
That one I have not been to, actually.
Oh,
yeah, so I fall into that category, unfortunately, of like, like when you live a place, you don't really do like the touristy things sometimes, and it's just So I think that
friends come in from out of town, because then you'll do that.
Right. Yeah, but it's one of those things like, if you came to visit, like we would totally go, right? Just to do the touristy thing or do whatever it is because like you're visiting, stuff like that. But yeah, that's exactly it. It's like, oh man, I forget about that because, well, I live here, so I kind of fall into that trap sometimes too of like not doing the touristy thing. But I would say to people that do that, like sometimes it's okay, and sometimes it's cool to go out and do the touristy thing or whatever, right? Like
telling you, just invite some friends over. You just tell them I'm showing them around, even though like you really want to go.
there you go. Yeah, you want to go yourself, right?
It's
Like it was
babies because every adult wants to go to a park and just swing.
Oh
right?
yeah,
But you can't.
But you can't because
You're
people
baby,
look at you
and then
funny.
you
I mean, I don't know. I'm under the belief that you totally can. I'm gonna go swing, man. If I want to swing, brother, I'm gonna go swing. Like, let's do it. I don't really care. But to be fair, I'm also not, like a full size adult. I'm kind of like a half size adult, king of the dwarves over here. So maybe they'd just be like, man, that 12-year-old looks kind of old,
You're covered in tattoos.
He's covered in tattoos, has a beard. It's a really old 12-year-old. Oof. But yeah. So I would also suggest to people that do live in places or whatever with like historic stuff like that, like it's not overly touristy sometimes, to go check out the cool stuff that makes your city or state or whatever your state, right? Like it's one of those things. Like I'm sure, even though it's like touristy, like the people that work there and all that kind of stuff like appreciate it or whatever. Like like Tombstone, right? Like they people make that a thing or whatever, and it's super cool sometimes. So yeah, for those that think it's not cool to do local touristy stuff or whatever, sometimes it really is. You should go check it out. So I'll probably take my own advice here and go check it out anyways, and maybe invite some friends or something like Charles said, and be like, hey, we're gonna go do this, we're gonna go do some cool historical stuff, got some stuff planned for you guys.
I want to go to the bar. Oh no, you'll want to do this.
Yeah, right. I think it also depends on the friends too. You gotta like invite your like history nerd friends. You're like, yeah, let's go. We're doing historical stuff, and they're all about it,
Yeah, no, I mean, I fall in the same thing. I'm not a big like skier. Obviously, Colorado is like known for like mountains or weed, and I don't really. I mountain hike and climb mountains. I don't partake in the weed, but that's usually what people think of Colorado as, and I'm like, there's so much more to Colorado,
Happened to the shootings.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, I actually do know that one really, really well because we just finished a episode on the Chuck E. Cheese murders. That
jeez.
I know the dude says it didn't inspire Five Nights at Freddy's, but it totally did.
It probably did. Don't let them.
It was really pretty powerful and sad because one of the Chuck E. Cheese graves, right behind it, is one of the Columbine graves.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and so that was, I don't know, super powerful to me. I was like, this really sad. We do have way too many of those in Colorado.
Also, Jinx, you owe me a Coke.
Sorry, I just brought it really, really down, guys. My bad.
No, I mean, not wrong though.
It's terrible.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, like not to hop off topic like yet again, but still with
talking
people
about young
people.
guys.
Because I used to live in Aurora, right? Like it was one of those things. I was stationed at Buckley at one point in time. But the Batman shootings, right?
Aurora theaters. Yeah.
So I actually had friends that night that were at that theater. Because that's I always told I never liked the Aurora 16. Like that was, and I'm so serious. It was one of those ones that I was like, we would never go there because I was like, this place is ghetto. Like it really is like the ghetto movie theater.
They've tried to make it nicer now, but it's still in the rougher part of Aurora.
Oh, 1000%. Right next to the Aurora Mall. Like those two places are synonymous with not great things. But yeah, so it was crazy to me. I was like, man, I'm glad you guys are okay. But I told you guys, the Chinese is way better. That one's my favorite.
Oh, on Parker Road there.
On Parker, yep. The Chinese theater is my favorite. Love that one.
See, that's not far from Billy the Kid Brother grave. He's off. Do you know that cemetery that's next to like the Chick-fil-A? It's like in a parking lot on Parker Road.
I don't. I don't really go hunt down cemeteries too often, Keegan.
That's why we got to hang out more.
Speaking of which, I will be up there actually on Thursday.
This Thursday?
This Thursday, yeah. I'll be visiting one of my friends for a couple of days. So, but she is in. I think she's in Aurora. So Aurora, Denver area type. So I'll be around there till Monday morning. So you know what I mean. There's a chance to hang out or do.
There's a really cool cemetery, we can meet at.
Yeah, I'm sure she would love that. Hey, do you want to go to a cemetery?
So, Young Guns. I was like, what are we doing? Jor-El, was this your first time watching Young Guns 2?
It was. So yeah, I hadn't seen the original Young Guns until you mentioned doing a deep dive on it. So then I watched that, and I hadn't seen Young Guns 2 until today.
Well, did you at least hear the Bon Jovi song at some point?
The one that's in Young Guns?
Yeah.
Maybe. I'm not sure. I honestly, as I was watching the movie, I was so kind of immersed in it, I wasn't even thinking about the music. And then, like at the end, I was like music by Bon Jovi, and I was like, interesting.
Yeah, because I think it was during the first one. Fusco was listening to like Bon Jovi, and he wanted Dead or Alive in.
Wanted, obviously. Yep.
Yeah, and Bon Jovi was like, it doesn't make sense for the time frame. Like it's something about motorcycles and stuff. He's like, let me write you a song. So he wrote like a whole song for just Young Guns 2.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, that's cool.
Blaze of Gloria. Nolan, what about you? Was this your first time, or did you get to watch it before?
No, so it's one of the ones that I completely forgot that they made a second one. So this was like the first time that well, because the first one's really good or whatever, right? And everyone likes that one. I feel like this was one of those ones that like that falls in that category of like the like sequels or whatever that like they're good, but it's not the first movie. You know what I mean? It kind of falls off, but like isn't as good, right? So you kind of just go, oh, I forgot they made a second one. Like, you know what I mean? Because like when you have the first movie, that's like, good classic, like everyone knows it, kind of probably have seen it kind of thing. Like it is one of those ones you're like, oh man, I forgot they made a sequel to that one. And yeah, it's just like, oh, because it gets overshadowed so much by the first one. But yeah, so overall, this was my first time watching this one. And it was still pretty good. Just one of those things that it has like it's like one of those ones that like it feels like they're like trying to like end the characters in a way, right? Like it's like one of those type sequels or like movies like that where it's like you didn't really know what happened to them like after the first one or whatever, and then it was like well, we need to kind of show people what happened, or you know what I mean, something like that. Where it's just like them trying to like send characters off, which is like I think that's cool sometimes, but at the same time I'm like kind of like the mystery, right, of like literally letting these dudes ride off into the sunset sometimes, right? Like yeah, so I don't know, it's a toss up for me sometimes on those type of movies where like sometimes it's cool to see how they possibly met their end or whatever, but other times it's like I like the mystery. You got to just let them be, let them ride.
Well, you have a little bit of that sequel thing, right? Where like characters separate and are like, we'll never see each other again until the sequel.
Right. Yeah. Like
we need to have a reason to put them back together. Right.
Well, yeah, because it's one of those things like because that does upset me a little bit, right? When that happens, because it's like, man, the first movie was great. It had a natural ending. Like there's none of that. And then it's like, now you got to come back and somehow like retcon some goofy stuff or whatever to be like, oh, we're back again. Oh, cool. And you're like, all right.
Just
like,
wait till Guns 3 comes out. Then
don't do that.
Because the zombie.
Hey, Emilio said it's gonna happen. He said Lou Diamond Phillips is back, even though he died. Christian Slater's back, even though his character is dead.
I was like, what? Everyone's dead. You can't.
Yeah, you can't call them Young Guns anymore. They're old guns.
They're old. It's Old Guns 3 now. Yeah, like that's.
Yeah. Well, see, in the mock-up, I'll have to send it to you guys. The young part's been like shot out, so it just says Guns 3.
Oh, what movie did you go to, Dad? Guns 3. Didn't realize there was like Guns 2, but
yeah, what was Guns 2? It sounds like one of those. I don't know if you guys have ever seen like a Hard Ticket to Hawaii, but it sounds like that type of movie where it's like a cheap exploitation film. That's what it sounds like. Guns 3 sounds like,
If I'm being honest, I feel like that's what like a lot of the Crow 2024, like it's
whoa, you're speaking negative of the Holy Crow 2024.
You're damn right I am. That's my feelings on this movie, okay?
It was unnecessary. That's how I felt about it.
Thoroughly unnecessary. But that's what I mean. Like it just no soul, no nothing. It just so I feel like if they did somehow bring them back for Guns 3, it's definitely going to be not great and soulless.
I hate any sequel that where like more than a couple years have elapsed before the first one. Anytime you like revisit something, like like if there's something there's a movie and then like sequel happens like 2 years later, it's okay. But if like 10 years have passed and then you're like, let's make a sequel, it never works. I can't think of a single example.
So like with that, it's one of those things like because I kind of agree like to some degree like because the one that like bothers me the most for some reason is why was the first Bad Boys made in 95 and then like they decided to make a sequel in 2003. Like it was like such a large gap of like time. I was like, good Lord. And then it was like, oh, hey, let's make another one. Like, let's make the third one, 15, 20 years later almost. You're like, what? Well, why? And then they're like, you know what? We're going to do it again. We're just going to another one. And I was like, wow. So yeah, well, it was like, I was like, wow, 2 years in between this. I was like, that's the shortest time in between a Bad Boys movie that you guys have ever done. Like, what? Yeah, I was like, this is craziness to me. But yeah, I completely agree. I definitely don't like it when it's like an absorbent amount of time, like especially when it comes to like live action stuff, right? Because obviously, like animation or whatever, like you can have The Incredibles in 2003, you can make The Incredibles 2 or whatever in 2016, and it's fine because you just animate them, slightly older,
Because no matter how much of a good movie you make, like if you're watching movie one, you're like, oh, I'm gonna watch the sequel, and you watch it, and the people are like significantly older. Unless you have a really, really, really good reason, it just kind of screws with your head.
Oh, 1000%. Like Zombieland. Zombieland was fantastic. First movie, awesome. 2009, right? They decided to make Zombieland 2, 2020 or whatever it was, something like that. Everyone's like significantly older now, especially Abigail Breslin, right? Like she's like all legitly grown up instead of like kind of a
kid, yeah,
a teenager like kid or whatever kind of thing. And it's like, yeah, that's a completely different dynamic now. And I think that's like kind of what made that the second movie not as good as the first one was exactly that. It's like, man, you guys you had a hit on your hands, and if you would have done it within 5 years or whatever, like it would have probably been significantly better. But now she's like, mid-20s, like 10 years later, it's like it's different.
Well, I think like Jor-El was saying, you need like a reason to do it that way. Kind of like the Before trilogy by Linklater. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but he did them like 9 years apart. But there's a reason because it looks at people at different ages. It's the same cast, but like young Ethan Hawke, then middle aged, then old.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's not a movie for everyone. It's very much a slow character type of movie, but sometimes I enjoy those.
No, those are good movies.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's a good story sometimes. You know what I mean? Like I can't stand slow like movies with bad character design and character development through the whole movie, and you're like, this was an entire waste of time. God.
I also don't like movies where every aspect of the movie is bad. So I'm with you.
I mean, good call. Yeah.
I disagree with you.
I mean, well, to be fair, George, like,
yeah,
The Room is so terrible that it's good. You know what I mean? Like, it is one of those movies where you're like, everything is terrible about this movie,
right?
That's what makes it like watchable or like good, right?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I like really good and well made movies, and then I do have a soft spot for those really bad, like kind of trashy flicks, because they're kind of funny in a way, and you're like, you know what, this is kind of fun. Get some friends together and you just watch one of these.
Which
I
reminds
think
me,
there has to be an earnestness to those type of movies for you to like it.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which exactly that. But I was gonna ask, since we're talking about like terrible movies or whatever, or at least people think they are, where do you land with Rocky Horror Picture Show?
Jor-El, do you want to take that one first?
Oh, me. I saw the movie once and I really didn't like it, but not because I thought it was bad. It just sometimes one of two things. Either it's just something within me just didn't gel with it, or I didn't watch it at the right time. Because I think sometimes you come to a song, you come to a piece of literature, you come to a movie, and you watch it once and you start to watch it, you don't really connect with it. And then maybe like years later, you like hear that song on the radio and you're like, I really like that song now, but I just wasn't ready at that time. So that might have been what happened with me. I also just know so many musical theater geeks, and I say that endearingly. who like absolutely love that show. It's like people who are fans of Tool. You know, like they're just so into it. It's you almost find it like kind of annoying. So maybe that's also where a little bit of my reticence comes from. But I remember seeing it once, and I'd like heard people like quote it so many times, and I just didn't like it.
Yeah, I'd say I kind of fell into what Jor-El was saying with the second one, where I probably just wasn't the right age. It just didn't connect with me. So at some point, I'll end up rewatching it. You know, I watch a lot of films, so I'm sure I'll get around to rewatching it.
There's campy stuff that I do like what's that? The pop musical, Reefer Madness.
Oh
They
yeah,
made a movie version of the musical that's super kind of camp and funny and weird, and I really like that. So it's not that I don't like camp stuff, just
For me, it's one of those things like I can understand exactly where you're coming from, Jor, because like for me, same thing, right? Like the girlfriend I had at the time, huge band nerd, right? Like band girl type thing or whatever, and she's like, well, this movie's awesome, and me and my friends all love it, and you know what I mean? So I'm like, 16 or whatever, right? Like watching this. So she shows it to me, and I was like, it was okay. It was kind of cool, I guess, or whatever. Like, wasn't, you know what I mean? Like, wasn't super. I didn't hate it. I wasn't like, oh, that was awful or anything like that, because I just generally like movies. But I was like, okay, yeah, it was pretty good. Like some of the songs were catchy. Meatloaf riding a motorcycle. It's kind of cool. Um, but it's one of those things like I didn't like appreciate it until like later, right? So like I'm fast forward 10-ish years, and I'm mid 20s or whatever, and I ended up going to like a movie theater, like a not a live version, but like where they do the props and all of the other stuff that like goes along with it. And it was such a like different, like much more enjoyable experience when you have everybody there, acting stuff out, and squirting water guns and the paper and all, like the whole production or whatever kind of thing, right? And it being more like immersive, I was like, oh, okay, I appreciate this a lot more now. And it was one of those things I was like, yeah, the songs are still pretty catchy. Like I still, like some of those, but I was like, okay, yeah. So I do resonate with that whole, like sometimes it just depends on when you watch, like whatever it is. Right. You know what I mean? Same thing. Like I go back and watch Mortal Kombat every once in a while, and I'm like, man, this movie was awesome when I was 8, right? Like watching Liu Kang roundhouse kick the shit out of everybody. It's awesome. I love that. I go back and watch it now and I go, man, this is cheesy. Like, oh, I was like, I still like watching Liu Kang kick the shit out of people, but like, this was like really cheesy. Like watching it, like thinking back on it, I'm like, oh man, that was okay, cool. But time differences, right? Of like being an 8-year-old watching people kick people in the face is a lot cooler or whatever, right? You don't really care about the things that they say, and then like as an adult, you're like, okay, yeah, the face kicks are still cool, but like that guy said that? Like that's a terrible line. Who wrote this movie? Like this is awful.
experiences like are amazing. Especially like going to see a movie live with like a huge group of people. Like I went to a screening recently of Pulp Fiction that was in like a newly restored 35 millimeter print with a huge, like in Los Angeles at the Quentin Tarantino like movie theater at the Vista, and the vibe in there was awesome.
I'm super jealous. That's my favorite Tarantino movie is still to this day is like Pulp Fiction.
Yeah,
like it just instant classic for me.
Or Jackie Brown for me.
Okay, yeah, it's for me it's
mine's Reservoir Dogs.
Pulp Fiction, and then followed loosely, like it might be 1, 2, like alternate depending on how I'm feeling with Inglourious Bastards. Like that was just such a good one.
I like True Romance, which isn't a Quentin Tarantino film, but he wrote it.
Young Guns. It started to actually get planned pretty quickly after Young Guns 1 had come out. Like he started writing the scripts. Fusco did. But there is a new director, and I wanted to get Jor-El. Did you see any noticeable like differences in the film style in this one versus the last one?
Gosh, I wish I had rewatched Young Guns before I watched Young Guns 2, because it's been so long since I've watched the first one that it's kind of hard for me to compare the two, I guess, in terms of like a directorial style. I definitely think the characters, changed a little bit. Like you were talking about, they changed the way Billy was portrayed to make him a little more sympathetic, a little more like he cared about his friends. And that's also just in the writing. So I from a directing standpoint, I wish I had a better answer for you. The answer is no. I don't know.
Jor-El. No, it's all good. What about you, Nolan? Do you notice any changes 1 and 2?
It sucks because I'm gonna give you essentially the same answer. Like I didn't think about rewatching the first one and then watching the second one. I was like, well, I've never seen the second one, so I'm just gonna watch the second one. But yeah, I was like, oh man, of course he would ask that question. Like I was like, shit, I didn't brush up on the first one. To have any like actually notable because you obviously can notice a lot more when you do like back to back, right? But I'm sure there was a couple years. It was 88 and then like 90 or whatever
90, yeah.
between the movies. So it was like a couple years. So I'm sure people had a little issue or whatever there of like, oh, this isn't like the first one or whatever. I don't know. There's always going to be, but at the same time, like there's always going to be little changes, right? Like especially when there's like a new director or coordinator, writers, whatever have you. Things are always going to be like a little bit different. But at the same time, like that doesn't always mean it's a bad thing. And sometimes like you do have like, not that he was like a wooden character in the first one, but it's one of those things like him, it makes the like having Billy have like a heart, if you will, right? It makes him more of a likable character for like the audience, right? When it's one of those things, because I would say about 98% of people like care about their friends and like have friends, and it gives them, because I can guarantee you that 99.9% of us have never been gunslingers in the West, or have probably ever had friends gunned down like that by lynch mobs in the middle of town. But it's still, it still makes people sympathetic, right? Like you're like, oh, okay, like I can get behind him being like, you shot my friend. Like I'm gonna, like I can get behind that for sure, like 1000%. So like kind of making him into a little bit of a more sympathetic character or whatever, I think is a pretty good direction. At least for the second one, especially because you didn't really lose many people in the first one, but the second one, when you're losing buddies left and right, it's pretty, it would be, I think it would throw the movie off, if I'm being honest, right? If your friends are getting gunned down with you or whatever, and you're honestly kind of the problem, right? When it's your fault and you're like, nah, cool. You know what I mean? Like it sets a way different tone.
Movies are about voyeurism, for the audience a lot of the time, right? And so I think one of the ways this movie works really well is you kind of feel like it's a little bit of that buddy movie thing, right? Where you feel like I'm out there on this road trip with my friends, chased, by the bad guys, and we're just trying to survive. And I think that kind of like road trip feel kind of invests you a little bit in the story.
Well, yeah, there's a trip.
Yeah. Well, they don't have the the actual trip like they did in the first one. Man, that scene was weird. Like, cut that out. Like, I don't know. But yeah, I know Emilio was like one of the people heading Billy's change in this one, because he watched Young Guns 1 and he didn't like it. He was like, I thought it was going one way, and then the movie comes out and it's a different way, and I just don't like it. So he was really excited that he got asked to come back, because he's like, I can fix it. I can fix what I did wrong. And so I think that comes through. I think that was the biggest thing for me watching this one. And the first one was Billy's much more of a likable character, maybe not historically accurate, but he's getting there. He's getting pushed closer to what he would have been. Because that first one, man, he was just like gunning people left and right, and you're like, man, this guy's a psychopath. Like,
yeah. Want to make you famous? Like, it's absolutely.
Yeah, in the first one, you feel like he's the reason they're in trouble.
Yeah.
They're this crazy guy.
Well, I mean, in the second one, he's the reason they're in trouble still. Like,
true, but at least you feel for him.
Yeah,
fair.
At least he shows he's sorry for his actions in the second one.
Exactly.
He does. He
Uh,
does show a little bit of that. Like it's just one of those things. Like because I don't think he was trying to shoot a lot of people. You know what I mean? It was one of those ones that, especially what is it when he was in the jailhouse or whatever, and the dude like runs down the street. He's like, "Don't do it." He's like, "I swear, don't do it." And he like goes to do it, and he's like, "Man, like I told you not to do it." You know what I mean? He kind of like felt bad about it or whatever, right? Because he was like, "Well, I didn't really want to kill that guy, but you didn't want to take shotgun slugs to the chest either." So you know,
Or
but
like
Jor-El, did you get to film that scene?
yeah, the scene where I'm like, no, I don't want to shoot you, you know, and then the gun in the way we did it, the gun goes off like accidentally, right? Versus says he's doing it to get out. Some of the scene in the end with Pat Garrett, you know, Tina Ombre, all of those scenes. It was as I was watching it, I was remembering. Oh yeah, I remember when we shot the scene. We did this version of it, so it was definitely a trip down memory lane. I was also going to say with Tom, you know, you can tell initially he knows that this life is a life where you're probably going to end up dead, and so that's why he doesn't take him initially until none of the men show up, right? Who are going to be part of his posse, and then he's like, all right, you can go.
Which Tom, his inclusion is really weird because he was pretty much with Billy much earlier on, and they just like forgot to write him in Young Guns 1. So
Right.
he's like a completely kind of different character because I think he's about Billy's age in real life.
Yeah, they make him a lot
And
younger.
yeah, and they were friends like in yours, where they were pretty good friends. But at least they kept in the part where he gets shot by Pat Garrett first. That is pretty historically accurate. I think a lot of the historical inaccuracies come down to I don't think they thought Young Guns 1 was going to be a success. So
Totally.
they just went for it all and like they killed off like real characters in that one that should have died in this one.
so that's one of those things like that I was talking about, like with when it comes to like sequels, right? That like bothers
Mhm.
me to some degree. Um, it's one of those things like at least in my opinion, right? You know, obviously I'm not the biggest writer or whatever, right? Of scripts and or movies just yet, but it's one of those things like I feel like you write for longevity, right? Like you write to have that just in case, mostly because it is one of those things, at least you know, for me, like the way I think about things is like I'd rather have, you know, uh, just most things in life, to be honest, is I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it, right? So it's one of those things like maybe you do have this cool, you know, thing that you've created or something like that, and you didn't think it was going to be popular or whatever. It might not. Or you have something that's awesome and it does create a hit or whatever, and then you have that extra backup bit, right? That you can extend out or do whatever, like for like future things. And now it's also kind of one of those like double-edged swords too, right? Where you write for longevity and then like people don't like whatever it is, and then it's like you leave the season like on a cliffhanger and you're like, oh, that sucks. Like there's no like ending to whatever it is, right? But at the same time, I will take that over the everybody gets an ending, you know, everybody's happy, whatever, blah blah. And then it's like, oh well, this was wildly successful. We want more. We have to figure out now how to, you know, what I mean, shoehorn people in, how to bring people back, do whatever, right? And it makes for a wonkier, not as great second movie, if you ask me. But then again, like I said, I'm nobody, so I, you know,
Hey, you're somebody.
no one's really asking me. You know what I'm saying? So, uh,
Nolan, we're asking you. So
Yeah,
now
Keegan's
fair. Yeah. Well, you know, that's my take on it, anyways, right? On stuff like this, because it's one of those things. Like that's what it sounds like, right? Is they weren't really planning on it being either A, successful, or B, like, you know, being to some you know, a hit or whatever, right? Like it's a lot of people probably didn't like, oh, it's probably cool, one off, whatever, you know what I mean? Because like I think there's a lot of these like westerns, right, in the late 80s, early 90s or whatever. Like Tombstone was what, 92, 90ish, somewhere in there.
93, I think.
You know what I mean? In that same time frame or whatever, right? I think there was a lot of like a lot of those
There
type
was
like westerns.
Wyatt Earp, not same year.
Wyatt Earp, yeah, the, you know, it
Quick in
caught
the
fire,
Dead,
was
yeah.
kind of cool or whatever. And they're like, oh man, people like these semi-historical westerns because clearly they're not, you know, super historically accurate or whatever. They're like, yeah, we were just kind of throwing stuff together and hope it sticks.
Yeah. Well, I think you kind of see like the sequelitis, if we want to call it that, coming into like bring some of the actors back because some of them weren't as enthusiastic. Like Lou Diamond Phillips was like, I felt like we were kind of good with that first one, and Kiefer Sutherland wasn't the biggest to come back either. And his only way he would come back is if they killed him off. So
Was
that's
like
why
the
he,
shot, yeah.
yeah. And so they, Fusco is actually trying to go for accuracy, but he's like, Doc lives to be like 80 years old. Like, no, I'm not going to do that. He's like, I'm not coming back then. So that's why he ends up getting killed in Stinking Springs, is because that was the only way they could bring him back.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
He gets a pretty good death scene.
Yeah, see, originally that would have been Charlie Bowdry, but they killed
Right.
him off in the last one. His character is kind of odd in the last one, but yeah, so they're getting the cast back together. The music, obviously, we kind of talked about a little bit, but this one they use less like very 80s music like they did in the first one, and they used more rock into the symphonies and stuff like that to tie it in with Bon Jovi. And I don't know if any of you guys kind of caught that, but there was more rock infused into the actual soundtrack, so it would tie into that Bon Jovi.
So it ties into that. Catch that too hard. But it is one of those things that I like when they do things like that, right? Like I was given some moviecation to my nephew the other day because I put on like A Knight's Tale or whatever, right? And it was one of those things that like in that movie, the director used like modern rock songs to like convey
Queen.
to the audience like how it would have felt being there at that time. So it's one of those things I like stuff like that to where it's like, yeah, you might have used, like Queen or whatever, but it's like he was trying to convey to you like how it would have felt if you were there as the audience, like with the music or whatever that they were playing at the time and how excited and pumped up you were and all that kind of stuff. So I think music, honestly, like music makes movies, man. Like there's like imagine Star Wars without that soundtrack.
Be like, why are we scrolling for so long?
Wildly different movie, you know what I mean? Like it's
It's like
imagine Indiana Jones without dun, 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 you know what I mean? Like it just you're like, oh man, this is significantly less cool. Like so yeah, I imagine the same thing with these type of movies, right? Like it's you find the right sound, the right tone or whatever, and it changes the movie completely, right? Helps you feel, helps you process helps your ears help your eyes process what's going on or whatever, right?
Also with sequels is people, if a movie does well, the studio heads or the producers are always trying to figure out, oh, why did this do well? Because of this, all right, let's put this in the sequel. All right, it informs.
Yeah, that, and they're always in a way trying to like up the ante, so they're like, how can we push the envelope a little bit further? And I feel like this one has more action than the last one.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, go ahead, Jor.
I was saying up the ante. There are more butts in this one.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think it had a higher rating, so they were allowed to do that. It's funny because Great House, I think, is an older dude in real life, and they made her this they made him into like this prostitute.
Right.
And I love how they come back to that scene in like the outro where they're like, "Hey Billy," and it just shows that, and you're just like, "All right."
Like we got our shot.
I don't know. I think my ADD got the best of me there.
No, it'll come back. Come on.
Yeah, I was like,
I believe in you.
It'll make its way around. I promise. Yeah, it'll come back.
We were talking about upping the ante with sequels.
I was gonna say, so yeah, like this movie was a lot of action. There we go. Thank you. This one was definitely. I mean, it was really just dudes riding horses, shooting guns through the desert for almost an hour and a half or whatever, 2 hours. Which is cool. I love that, right? Like it's very entertaining. But it is one of those things like I'm torn, right? Like it's a double-edged sword sometimes, right? Of like you want to go above and beyond what you did the first time, but sometimes it's like too much, and on this one I didn't really feel like it was too much. I felt like it was it fit the tone of the movie, right? Because like sometimes that's what happens is they go, okay, we got to go bigger, we got to go better than the first one or whatever, and it's like, but why? There's no need to. And like this one, it's all of the stuff that happens. It's like it's not out of place because, well, that's what is exactly what's happening. It's just people are getting shot at. These guys are all running through the desert, and like that's just constant action of being chased through the desert. So it's like this fits, this works. It doesn't, we're not fighting 50,000 people for zero reason other than being like, well, we fought 40,000 in the last one, so got to do 50 this time. It doesn't feel like that was the decision that was made there.
Yeah, because the first one is about why he goes on the run. The second one is the run.
Realistically, that's I'm perfect right there. Perfect explainer.
And then the third one will be
the rise.
It would just be him as an old man in a house somewhere.
We'll get to it because obviously this goes with the well debunked story of Brushy Bill Roberts living on as Billy the Kid. He was one of like many claimants, but there's only really two big Billy the Kid claimants. One's John Miller from Arizona, one's obviously Brushy Bill. And so obviously we see that playing out. And they originally kind of played around to not having Emilio play old Billy. What? You got a question?
Sorry. It just, how back to like one of the early beginning conversations we had?
ADD, baby.
Absolutely. However, it ties into the movie. This time it does tie in. We're not getting off track here. I absolutely cannot stand his old man voice. Just
I can't stand his old man face. Not the like it's so many prosthetics.
It was the 90s, brother. Like it was literally 90. Like what?
I feel like there were better prosthetics in the 90s.
What
about when did Dracula come out?
Which one?
Yeah, the Francis Ford Coppola one.
I think that was like 95.
I want to say 93 or 4.
I mean, look at Back to the Future. They had prosthetics in that one.
Yeah. I mean, but he didn't look terrible. They didn't look terrible. Like I feel like there was just too many. Like there was too. They tried too hard.
Yeah, it looked like they created the prosthetics, right? Then they were like,
let's microwave it.
Enough.
Yeah,
more prosthetics. And then instead of like redoing the look, they just glued more prosthetics onto the prosthetic.
Yeah, it's not great. But his voice, to me, it just feels like he was trying too hard to do an old man voice. So like it was like, because when you're an old man, like it's your voice still, just
it's true.
You know what I mean? Like it's just a little, like maybe a little bit deeper from where, and that's about it. You don't have to. Don't use the elevator. Like, you know what I mean? It was like, bro, what are you doing? You're trying too hard right now. And I'm sad that no one told him that of like, you can tone it down on the old man voice or whatever. Like,
we'll see.
You know what I mean?
No.
He's very old. Like he's supposed to be about to die.
Yeah, but I mean, like, drink some milk and then talk or something. Like that's
a million packs of cigarettes every day.
Like, drink some milk and then do the ADR, and then like that'll probably be good. Like a little bit of gravel in your voice, and we'll call it square. But you don't have to full on, stress your vocal cords out for no reason.
Do you want to get really disappointed in humanity, Nolan?
I love being disappointed in humanity. It could be the third time today. What's up?
All right, so they were originally going to cast an old guy as Brushy Bill, right?
Cool.
But then Emilio dressed up as the old man that we see and wandered down to play chess with people, and it worked. So they're like, if it can fool people there, it's going to fool people in the movie.
Oh my God. Playing chess. Have you seen people playing chess? They're not focused on anything but the chess.
Well, I was going to say, but also, like, yeah, Jor-El's got a point here. Like, I'm not worried about what this dude looks like. I'm worried about how his brain works. Like, what? I'm not looking at his face. I'm looking at his soul. Like, yeah, it's just like, what? But
it's a great
also,
story,
Keegan, like, have you ever, like, watched people, like, legitly just, like, sat down and, like, watched people for about 30 minutes, like, in a public place?
I mean, I've gone to Roswell during the festival. Sometimes you just sit there and you're like, wow, this is happening. It's
like watching people, like, legitly people watching for, like, observing humans in their natural habitat.
I love people watching. I do it all the time.
Oh, yeah. But you will understand that, like, how unobservant people actually are. It's absolutely insane to me sometimes. And it's mostly because, like, not that I'm like superhuman, but like I feel like I have a little bit more observation than the average, like just, in general. But yeah, I'm like, man, people are like stupidly unaware of their surroundings, just like things that are happening, like a whole bunch of stuff. And I'm like, I don't know how people live their lives like that. Like, that's absolutely crazy to me. But so that's why that doesn't surprise me that like no one really, that you could fool somebody, because like, you know what I mean? Like, do you know, it's insane to me that like there are people that have known each other for years, right? Have been friends, whatever, interacted with them. But if you ask them what color, like eye color their friend has, and they can't tell you what they're like, that's crazy to me. You're like, you've known this person for years and you've interacted with them, all that, but you still don't know their eye color? That's insane to me, like on how unobservant people can be. And I don't know if they don't care or if it's just like an aloofness,
Um, there's that everyone's. I feel like I've seen that social experiment video, right, where there's a game of, I think it's basketball being played, and they're like, count the number of times the ball passes through the hands, and so you sit there watching it, and halfway through the game, like I think it's like an elephant or some animal like walks through the screen.
Literally, yeah.
Because you're so focused on watching and trying to count the number of basketball tosses. So that's how the human brain works, right? Let me put on my science goggles.
Well, I think it's a little easier when you have ADD, because like your brain is like this already.
It's ping ponging, yeah.
It's already ping pongy. So you're like, oh yeah, I can focus on the ping pong because it, you know what I mean? That's where it does like normally or whatever, right? But I don't know. It's just one of those things. Like I've just noticed that like some people are just, a lot of people actually just aren't super observant of everything, to be quite honest. Sometimes
Keegan,
I do like those little brain tricks though. Like, did you notice the elephant? And it's like, what elephant? And people are like, huh. And then sure enough, you like scroll back and you're like, holy shit, there was an elephant.
Yeah, totally.
But I counted 32 passes. Yeah, it's like,
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, what?
What do you think about the writing, the narration, Keegan, as like a through line? Because that's not in the first movie, right?
Yeah, and I guess it makes sense in this one because he's supposed to be telling the story to Morrison's like fill-in, because there was a actual like Morrison that met with Brushy Bill and like try to get him the pardon or whatever. That's a whole different story, but it made sense, and then I felt like it tied it better together than if it was just the beginning and the end, to have those little voices throughout. I do question how he survived, and we'll get to that, because they're burying something, and it's like, what did they bury? Like, did Billy just play dead and then he crawled out of the grave? Like, what happened? No, he doesn't, because they show him stealing the horse.
Yeah.
The Pat Garrett being his friend, that's not historically accurate, is it? Or is it?
Yeah, no, they like, I don't know, probably mingled together at points being in Fort Sumner, but not friends. It's definitely definitely the Brushy Bill side claims that. It's weird. Like I've been diving into a lot of these like different claimant, like Jesse James, Butch Cassidy, like all the people that claim to be him after, and it's always like the same story. And I'm just like, what causes that? What makes people do that?
I don't know. People want to be a legend, maybe, or something. Like, I don't know. I mean, like, legitly, right? Like, it's one of those things. Like, how do you build street cred, right? Essentially, like, because it's one of those things. It's not like back in those days. It's not like you could be like, I'm Billy the Kid, and someone Googles you and be like, no, you ain't. You know what I mean? Like, back then it was all about hearsay and whatever, right? Like, it was like, shit, you could go rob a bank. No one's gonna know who it is unless they've seen your face. You know what I mean? Like, was actually there, saw your face or whatever. Or you literally painted it on the side of the bank saying, Butch Cassidy robbed this place and, took off out of hell or whatever. It's like, and that's how it worked back then. So it's like, I don't imagine that it's like too far off, because it's exactly that. It's like, man, you say you're whoever and nobody can fact check you in the moment, right? Unless it's somebody that was like, no, I rode with Billy. Like, you ain't him, like, and the chances of that happening are damn near zero. So it's like, why not, right? Why not kind of steal somebody else's fame a little bit, right? Just for your own, reputation's sake, I guess, right? Because I feel like a lot of those things back in those days, that was it, right? Your reputation and your word was everything you had as a man back then, and that's what it was.
Yeah, well, kind of going off the picture, that's kind of how Butch Cassidy got chased out of America, because they weren't really 100% sure what he looked like at that time. They had his like mugshot or whatever, but the Wild Bunch posed for a picture in Fort Worth, and the photographer loved the picture so much he displayed it in his window. And someone was like, "Who is that?" And they told him, and they're like, "All right." They posted it everywhere.
And that's what I was gonna say. Like, that's another thing too. Is like, it's not like you had to stand around for 20 minutes to take a picture back then. So
Mhm.
like, it was one of those things. It's not like people were snapping. It was all hand drawn kind of stuff. And like, well, maybe your artist kind of had a little bit of Parkinson's or something and gave you the wrong nose. You know what I mean? Like, it's not gonna, like, oh, we caught this guy. He looks kind of like this piece of paper we have here. You know what I mean? It's like, kind of, I guess. But back then it was hard to tell. So, it's very possible that he could have survived and been an old man or whatever. And nobody knows what the hell Billy looks like or whatever, especially as he gets older and all that kind of stuff. And you really stay out of the air quotes limelight. But I mean, what else are you going to do? You start pointing out people, like, there's no picture of him or whatever, unless he wants a picture taken of him. So it's like, yeah, that's just how it works back then. But yeah, that's funny. Like, oh,
through line throughout the film of he wants to get pardoned. That's why he reveals himself, right, as an old man, and that's why he gets like lured in earlier, like by the governor.
But like, I imagine to some degree, like, most of the time these guys want to like stop being chased by the law. Like, they, you know what I mean? Like, you want to be able to settle down in a town real quick. Because I think he even talks about that or brings that up in the first couple minutes or whatever, right? Where he's in the town or whatever. He's like, I gave up my, safe hiding spot or whatever, blah, 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 where people knew me, protected me and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? And then the dude was like his friend or whatever, was like, hey, Billy or whatever. And he's like, hi, start shooting at him. You know what I mean? He's like, oh, son of a bitch. So, you know what I mean? Like, I personally can identify with that of like I would like to be pardoned so my friends stop shooting at me. Like, that would be super great. I'd love that.
I did like that scene. I had not remembered that scene at all until I watched the movie again. And it was funny. He's just like, "Hey, Billy," and he's like, "Hello," and then he's like, "You're like, whoa, whoa."
Yeah, like, hey, Neo or whatever his name is. He shoots at him and he puts him down. He's like, damn, Neo, come on, man. What are you doing? And that's what I mean. It's like he was upset about having to shoot like people that he knows and likes or whatever. But they were just trying to get him or whatever to be famous or make $500 or whatever it was. And it's just like, yeah, like I would eventually would like to not be afraid of my friends, like even that's what they did with Pat, right? Like that was like what, you're part of this crew, you know what I mean? So, and then he turns into the sheriff or whatever and tries to air quotes, hunt his friend. And it's like, we used to be boys. Like, what happened? That kind of thing. So it makes for an interesting movie, obviously, right? When you have the old, because I kept thinking like, like keep your friends close, but your enemies closer kind of thing or whatever. And I was like, man, is that what happens when you take your friend and move them to the enemy category? They get closer, But yeah, I with that sentiment of like, I want people to stop shooting at me. That'd be cool. I'd like to be able to sit here and eat a plate of eggs without somebody trying to shoot me in the mouth.
Yeah, there's that funny moment when he's like, "Can I get some cake?"
Yeah, right. I do love that. I was like, man, this man loves him some cake. Apparently, no, the white cake with the sweet frosting.
The sweet frosting. He did end up meeting with Lou Wallace. They had kind of formed a pact with the house. They both sides were kind of done fighting, and so they agreed we're done. But then I forget who it was, but he ended up shooting a lawyer, and so that's when Billy was like, "Hey," reached out to Lou Wallace and was like, "I will turn state's evidence if I can, get off scot free." And then of course the trial went out, and they didn't really care what Lew Wallace wanted to do, and Lew Wallace stopped writing to him. So we do have quite a bit of writings from Billy to Lew, and you can see him like slowly getting more angry as it goes on. Like he starts off really nice, and then he's like, "This is the last time I'm doing this," because he's like, "Hey, you know," he felt like he should get that.
When did Billy get a pardon? Because he did at a certain like from the state of New Mexico. Didn't he get one at one point, like in modern day or something?
No, one of the governors was going to, and I think it was Bill Richardson was going to, because it was on one of the documentaries. He's like, "I'll sign it in this chair that Lew Wallace sat in," and then like he was just like, "Oh, it's been too long. No need to dig into that."
Still hasn't happened. Come on, guys.
Right. Hey, we can start a petition now. No, but I know that's too brushy Bill. Like that's historically accurate. He came forward to say he was Billy and wanted the pardon. And so that's kind of was his whole deal, hooking up with Morrison and then going to see the then governor of New Mexico, who pretty quickly like brushed him away as just some like crazy old guy trying to get fame. But yeah, there's some good historical like accuracies in this one, and then there's some like inaccuracies. Did you guys have like a favorite scene, Jor-El?
Okay, I like when I think I might have two. I like when the Christian Slater character, I forgot his character's name, but when he's being like real racist, and then they start fighting amongst each other, and then he like one guy gets like stabbed in the arm, and
Chavez,
yeah, exactly, and but then you kind of realize they're all still boys. they're all still on the same side. So I like the infighting that happens between them because it adds a lot of like tension to the story.
No, so I was just gonna base off of that scene. There's a whole reason why they had him get stabbed in the arm.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So there was an earlier scene that wasn't really in the script, but they kind of came up with it on the day, where Chavez is escaping the lynch mob at the time, and like Billy like shoots off the chains or whatever, and it spooked the horse, and he's wearing like this like actual noose. It's not even like a breakaway, and it got caught on the saddle or whatever. And so he got like drugged by his neck through the set, like broke his like knee, broke his arm. And so they came up with the stabbing to like play off why his arm was kind of wonky. Yeah.
Makes sense. Wrote it in. Yeah, I like that scene. I also like where where they're in the saloon, whorehouse, whatever, and then Billy sees his old friend who used to be his friend. I mean, just from a cinematic standpoint, who used to be his friend, who's now back, for. Is that wait? Hold on. Am I getting something mixed up? Yeah, I think it is there. Oh no, no, they're not together. But I just like when they get reunited, and you see like, oh, you were my friend, and now you're not. But also the scene. Sorry, I'm mixing things together. Now the scene when the guy who's the head of the mob, who's like a lawyer, comes in the whorehouse and is like, I need the Indian, and they're like, all right, we'll give you the Indian, right? And you get to see how tricky Billy the Kid can be.
Yeah, where he's like, all right, here he comes, and just pushes him out.
I'll hop on the end of that one. That's a pretty good one. Where you're exactly right. Like the trickiness, right? That or the slyness is Billy the Kid, right? But it's actually so I've got a couple, but the one before that, I don't know why it's always funny to me when you have a bunch of vagrants or a bunch of like goofballs that are running from the law or whatever, but they're acting civilized. So like I love the part where I'm coming in to talk to you, whatever, blah blah blah, and they're like, okay, cool, and he like turns like, all right, everybody, be civilized, right? Like, yeah, and then he comes in and everyone's like, playing cards, sitting there like reading the paper. Like I love that, like that they come in and everyone's literally like, we're just here behaving ourselves, no big deal, like what? We were just standing at the door, guns in each hand 2 seconds ago. We've just been here the whole time, chilling, having good gentlemanly conversation. So I like that scene because that's pretty funny. I do like the like just how like even and like even then like they were still doing like boss lady kind of shit. the part after that where Pat comes in and like lights her thing on fire, and she's like, okay, that's cool. And then she, walks out butt ass naked and is like, see ya, like I'm done with this town. I believe she says something about kissing her lily white ass, like on the way out. And then she like, takes her little horse and all butt naked and is like, doop, 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 doop. So I always thought that was kind of funny. But I think like my ultimate like favorite bit was the part where they're running through the desert or whatever. And Chavez is yelling, I think Anse or whatever, and and I was like, oh, I was like, son of a bitch. A lot of us have been there. If you've ever like ridden dirt bikes out in the desert or anything like that, like there are sometimes you don't know what's on the other side of it. Like you might think it's a small thing and you're catching air, my guy. So that one's like from personal experience of like, yep, done that. Not on a horse, but like to give you that oh shit kind of moment, like coming over a bank or something. You're like, that was a lot farther down than I thought that was gonna be. But yeah, so like that part was probably my favorite part, is like him and then everybody just ass over tea kettle going and everybody. But the fact that at the end he was like, what does that mean? There's it's an old Indian saying. What's it mean? Stop. And I was like, oh man, that's pretty good. So I think that's my favorite part was watching them go all over take their horses right over the berm, just tumbling down the side.
As I was watching that, I was like, oh my god, this is like ridiculous.
Definitely some mistakes can be made out in the desert that will definitely not end well for you. My thing is like, I was like, yes, I get it, it's a movie or whatever, but like realistically, the realism is you and all of your horses are dead. Like realistically, every one of those guys is gone. You know what I mean? Like you're
get up and go and walk away. They're fine.
Yeah. Well, I was like, okay, so as a human, you might make it through that or whatever, right? Get thrown from the horse or something, but realistically, your horse is broken after that. Like your
horse is like you break a leg and it's like
that horse is done. Yeah. So you're not going anywhere. You ain't getting anywhere near Mexico, my friend. Like, yeah, it's just so yeah, I was just one of those things that was like, man, like I was like, nope, those horses ain't making it through that fall like that. Like this isn't Skyrim, you know what I mean? That's not Shadowmere. Can't just be taking them off of the side of mountains all cool. But yeah, so that's my favorite part, Keegan, was probably that one. Like I had a couple little spots in there, but that's probably honorable mention though. When he shoots old boy out the window with the shotgun. Best $1.80 I've ever spent. Yeah, that's honorable mention right there. That was a pretty good one-liner for lighting somebody up, especially because he was just talking shit about it, You've ever seen the $1.80 can do to a man?
Kind of how Bob's always come off in any Billy the Kid thing. You'll always see him just like harassing the kid. And he's like, I'm going to shoot you with this shotgun. And then Billy ends up shooting him with his shotgun.
That's I don't know if, if you guys play video games or not, but it's one of those things like Call of Duty literally has achievements for you, shooting somebody with their own, like killing somebody else with their own gun, which is like, just some of the highest form of disrespect you can possibly have. So, getting taking the forever sleep by your own weapon is always one of the worst ways to go.
Same, Keegan.
I like a lot of the little character moments, especially when they're like in Stinking Springs, just between the gang, and where Billy's showing a lot more vulnerability and like realizing he messed up. I think that scene especially, because then like most of the gang gets shot or killed after that, and just to have that kind of humility from Billy, because there's always like that moment in a Billy movie, and I think that's something I wished we had more of in the first Young Guns, to see that. Also the beginning, like I said, with the guy being like, hey Billy, and then just shoots him. I enjoyed that. And I love the ending where he's running at Brushy Bill as he's walking away, and he's like, Billy, and then it like kicks into the Bon Jovi and kind of gives you the highlights of the movie. That one I've always thought of, and it's always stuck with me. And I've never ridden a horse off a cliff in real life, but in Red Dead Redemption, I've done that more than once. I'm just running around. I'm like, oh no, my horse is in a tree now.
Jeez, out here killing Arthur Morgan's horse all over the place, huh?
Oh man, it was bad. You get a really nice horse, and then bam, tree.
Oh, yeah, that's the most unfortunate thing. Just right over the side of a cliff, or a bear. I hate bears. Bears are the worst.
Right.
Who is the Keegan, you're gonna have to remind me of this as the one historian here. Who's the first guy that Billy kills? Oh, Cahill, right? That's
Yeah,
it.
Wendy Cahill. Yeah, he.
Yeah, I was gonna say Frank Cahill, and I was like, I want to make sure I said it accurately. So the actor who played Cahill in the in our version, which isn't in the final cut, it was like a scene that got cut out. But he voices a character in Red Dead Redemption.
Oh, really?
I don't know which character it is. I think it's some like Irish character or something.
I'll have to check it out. See, that's why we got to start the movement. # release the Jor-El cut.
It was there was like a extended like long cut that had so many other scenes that we shot that like it was interesting because I had a conversation with the director and he is like I shot it like a film and then they kind of cut it up a little bit, so which is what happens, right?
Yeah, with anything, writing, filming.
I was gonna say I always feel bad for my friends who like are in who act and stuff and then like they get cut out and it's like
I saw that with Deadpool and Wolverine. One of Ryan Reynolds' friends like got cut out completely, and he just posted. He like took it in spirit. He's like, I know it wasn't Ryan. He wouldn't have done that to me on purpose. Like, but yeah, no, the editing process is something. It's tricky because you're trying to tell the story, but you got to make it so the readers or viewers want to go on that journey. And so, yeah, I mean, I think we've all been there. You know, Jor-El, you do music and you've acted, so you've seen it. Same with you, Nolan. So, I mean, as far as like editing, what did you guys notice, Jor-El?
The editing in this, I thought it was a little smoother than the first one. I think they must have had like a larger budget for this. I don't know. I think the editing was good. I didn't notice anything that was. So sometimes I wouldn't call this like an amazing movie, but sometimes in the best movies, right, you kind of want to like not like when it comes to I think editing, when it comes to the, like music, and when it comes to a lot of these things, cinematography, you don't. Sometimes you want some stuff to stand out, but a lot of times, like some of the best editing that you see is the stuff that you don't notice, right? You know, sometimes if you notice something that's got like really, sometimes you want something that's really kind of flashy, but sometimes if you notice like editing, it means it's been chopped up really badly, like in some of those like, you know, post-Bourne movie action scenes, you know, where everything is like that's like Taken or something, or any of those like other kind of movies around that time period, right? They got influence where everything's chopped up, you can't really see what's going on, right? So I thought the editing in this was fine. I didn't notice it, but that's a good thing.
Nolan, what about you?
If I'm being honest, this I think falls into that category that we were talking about of like the like going over the top or whatever. I think the editing, the way it was edited, and the pace of the movie, it definitely feels fast, right? Like it was one of those things that like I think when I looked it up on Amazon or whatever, because that's where I watched it, it said like 105 minutes, right? Something like that. And I was like, okay, so that's, an hour and a half and some change or whatever, a little bit extra. And it was one of those things that like I was watching it and it didn't feel like an hour and a half. First and foremost, like it felt very quick. Like the movie itself was like very fast and quick. But I think if I'm being honest, I feel like that might have been like the way they wanted it to be, right? Because like realistically, like them running around chasing each other around the desert or whatever, that takes a long time. But it's one of those things, like I think if you space that out and make it a longer process than what it needs to be, it slows the movie down, it slows the pace down, and then it kind of might make it boring just because it's now you're just watching dudes kind of just ride horses, Which not saying that watching dudes ride horses is like a boring thing, right? Like I just went to a rodeo not too long ago and like it's cool, but you know what I mean? Like realistically, if we're watching a Western, 95% of people are going to prefer, watching Jor-El shoot somebody over, me ride a horse. Like realistically,
Look at the stats.
Do it. I'm gonna do that on the community tab. I'm gonna put what would you rather watch? Jor-El shoot somebody, or Nolan ride a horse,
or me ride a horse. Yeah, it's just
no.
We got to know. This is very important, guys. But you know what I mean? Like I would say, like realistically, 95% of people are gonna be like, well, I want a Western actiony movie. Like I would like to see gunfights versus just like people riding horses through the desert. Which in its way is like cinematic and cool and its own kind of thing, but like realistically, like it can slow things down. Like that's why like perfect example is like I feel like the extended versions of Lord of the Rings are a little slow sometimes because they extended out the points of them literally like walking, right? Like of their like travel, and it extends the movie or whatever like unnecessarily in the travel bits. Now the extra scenes are great, right? I love the extra flavor and the additives that the extra scenes provide, but sometimes when it's just like extra travel time, it does make it feel a little like stretched and a little bit long. And it was like, okay, I get it. You're trying to show off the scenery, like it's super beautiful movie, all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, it's like, okay, it's kind of slow now. So, and I think that's like, as far as like an editing standpoint, it was meant to be kind of fast paced and very like go, go, go. You know what I mean? Like these guys are after these guys, like trying to get them super hard. And I think that kind of comes across with the way they, cut it or whatever. Right. So yeah, that's my take on it. What about you, Keegan? How do you feel? What do you feel it was good? Do you feel it was bad? Kind of slow? What could they have done?
I honestly really like the pacing in this one. It's hard because the time frame, like you said, that they're taking from is like a year and a half time frame, so it's condensed. But I thought they did a good job at attempting to tell that story in an hour and a half time frame, which is hard. I think the first one it's more condensed because it's a smaller bit of time in real life too. So I think that's where it just differentiates. I feel like it didn't have a scene that slowed the movie, and I think that peyote scene in the first one slowed it, especially because that was just bloopers. They weren't going to put it in, and then they're like, "Oh, put it in." But you were talking Lord of the Rings. There are some Lord of the Ring connections here because the director of this one went on to be like second director of photography or something with Lord of the Rings.
Interesting.
And then Viggo Mortensen plays John W. Poe.
I was gonna say also Vigo's in this one too. Like it's
Yeah.
It was one of those. So that was kind of it's funny that you bring that up too, because like I'm sitting here and I'm like, oh yeah, I was like, they brought back Kiefer Sutherland and a couple of the other guys or whatever, and then like he shows up and I was like, Aragorn's in this movie, like freaking Viggo Mortensen's in this one. I was like, man, that dude's older and been acting longer than I thought. Like it was. I don't know if you guys ever do that when you're like watching stuff or whatever. You go back and you look and you're like, and it just might be the most minor of side characters or something like that, and you're like, holy crap, you're like, this dude's been acting a lot longer than I thought. And same thing, like I didn't know Viggo, this is 1990, you know what I mean, like a full 10 11 years before Lord of the Rings. So like I was like, man, he's been acting a lot longer than I thought.
It's the case with most people, but yeah, it's always fun seeing like actors in movies before they were more well known. Also Bradley Whitford is in this. He's the guy, he's in the beginning. I don't know, have you seen Get Out?
Yes.
He's the creepy dad in Get Out.
Oh yes, that's right. Yeah. I know him from one of my favorite movies, Billy Madison. So
sorry,
I would say he's in Billy Madison.
Oh, Billy. Okay.
So yeah, it's one of those. I was like, is that a young? Oh, it is. Like, yeah. Oh, okay, sure. I was like, that's. But it's crazy to me. I love doing that. Like going back and like watching old movies that I absolutely love, and I go, oh my god, that was that dude. Like no way. That's crazy. Like it just like there's a lot of ones that like fly over my head. Like was it Ghost Ship? I think. I forgot Carl Urban was in that movie. Yeah, he's one of the two dudes like that are eating like they find the food on the ship or whatever, and they're like eating out of cans, like the beans or whatever, and like they're tripping, of course, like the ship's doing like weird things to them, but like they, they're like, oh, the food's good, and then they like look down and it's like all infested with like maggots and like gross stuff, or they're like, they start like freaking out. But I was like, huh, that's Carl Urban, like in the movie for like 5 minutes. Like it just, it's one of those like random small roles that you just see people in. You're like, huh.
One of my favorite games that I play in a movie theater with one of my friends is we pretend like we know random names from the credits of movies as the credits are rolling. So like a random name will come up like Keith Jarrett, set decorator, and then we'll go, oh, Keith Jarrett. Of course Keith Jarrett will be doing this, and we'll just go to that with different random names in the credits.
So it's one of those things that I did this recently, and I can't remember what movie it was. I think it was Venom. I think it was the last Venom movie. Went and saw that one or whatever. But they got to a point to where like all of the credits were all like Indian people,
Yeah.
and I was like, that's a like I was like this. Did they shoot a lot of this movie like in like India or somewhere like over there or something like that? But it was just one of those things. Like I started reading like I was like trying to read and pronounce their names just because like I was like they have some of the hard ones to pronounce. So like I was sitting there, I was like reading just reading off these names, and I was like, I probably got some of those right, but I probably got a lot of those wrong.
Well, talking of actors, James Coburn is in here as Chisholm. And yeah, he actually says it's almost the exact same line that he said when he played Pat Garrett in Sam Peckinpah's Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. When Billy rides up, he's like, "You can shove it up your ass." That's an homage to that movie, because that's what he says in that movie too. And so I love little film nuggets like that where you're like, "Oh, okay, I get why you did that."
I do like a lot of those like weird little not callbacks, but like little Easter eggs and things like that or whatever. That it's like, oh well, this guy was in this movie or something like that, and it was like, well, that he did say that in a different one. Or I think one of my favorite ones is the dude that plays Hector in the Fast and the Furious. In every single movie he's ever in is Hector. Yeah. So it's just, like little stuff like that is always funny to me. It's just like dude is always Hector in every movie or stuff like that. It's like, oh well, they did a dance move in this movie, and then like they somehow did it again like in a different one. Like I think it's Sam Rockwell. He's always dancing.
He's always
like,
dancing.
Dude's always dancing. I love Sam Rockwell. But yeah, I love little stuff like that where it's just like, little stupid callback.
Pitt's eating, right?
What's up?
Yeah, Brad Pitt's always eating.
Brad Pitt's eating. Yeah, Brad Pitt's always eating, man.
So we get a new Pat Garrett in this one as far as casting, because in Young Guns 1, he makes a brief appearance and he's played by Patrick Wayne, John Wayne's son. And then Peterson takes over in this one. How did you guys think he did?
I might have liked him a little better, but I think it's also just because he has more of a character arc.
I think he looked more like Pat too. He looked lanky and had that look. For Wayne, I didn't think had that.
It's interesting how he changes his facial hair when he assumes his kind of character.
Oh yeah.
Well, I was just about to say that. I was gonna say like I also like the facial hair change, the costume change he had like mid sheriff. Like I'm a sheriff now. I gotta have a respectable facial hair structure instead of
it was his heel turn.
This weird outlaw shit that he had or whatever.
I want to see the deleted scene where he's like in the mirror deciding how much to take off, because every guy, this is an experience that women don't have, at least most women that I know. Every guy, when you get the full beard, the full mustache, everything, as you like go off the shave, you're trying out different looks, and then you have to make that decision in your head, like, do I go like no mustache, all beard, like. Do I take out the soul patch? Do I do this? I want to see the scene where he's like in the mirror, like, maybe I'll take this out. A little more. No, too far.
So it's funny that you bring that up, Jor-El, because I think that's probably one of my like favorite jokes from How I Met Your Mother. But also like it's one of those things like so for a while there I was in the military, so like I would have to shave my beard. But I would go through that always, right? And that's what I would do is I would do I call it like look of the day. So like about the week leading up to the time I had to be there, right? Because I got to be clean shaven and when I get there. So it's like every day I would do a different look, and I would like take pieces off or do something like differently. And it was one of those ones that like I think one time like I like took the bottom out. So I had just the bottom out and was like rocking the old like old timey inventor dude or whatever, and everyone hated it. And I was like, "Why? This is amazing! I look like one of the old like British dudes." Like I was like, "All I need is a bowler hat. This is perfect. I love this." And then I think one of the other times I like did like the kind of like the Hulk Hogan, where I like got rid of the like after that I got rid of the sideburns and the chops and just had this like little handlebar thing going, and people were like, what are you doing? Like, you were the absolute worst. And I was like, this is hilarious to me. I love doing this. This is such a great time. And I think you take everything off and then just rock the little chin strap there, little bottom bit or whatever. And then I think I threw like a wavy haired wig on, and I looked like Claudio from Coheed and Cambria. And I was like sending people Snapchat videos of me singing Coheed. Yeah, but yeah, absolutely. Like it's unfortunate because some people will never understand how much fun that is. like doing that. So I would absolutely, if I ever got to direct a movie where the dude like was going to change his appearance like that, I would definitely include that. Like, and I know it might set it like mess up the tone of the movie, but it would be hilarious just to have, right? Because you're exactly right. Like, first of all, you're going to shave something or whatever, and you're going to look at yourself in the mirror, and then you're going to do a funny accent or something stupid that goes along with the facial hair you just made. And it's always funny. And it's like, yeah, this was supposed to be a serious movie, but
feel different about yourself and who you are every time you take something else off. You're like, oh, I'm this guy now.
Oh, absolutely. Like for Halloween, it was one of those things. Like I ended up being pirates with me and the girlfriend or whatever. Like, all right, let's just do pirates. So I ended up doing Johnny Depp on it or whatever, right? So I was like full beard, and I was like, and then took all this off, and then got rid of this a little bit in here. So just had the little bottom bit, and then like the mustache, and I was like, put on a little guy liner there. I was like, actually looked like a really good pirate. Yeah, this is nice. I like this. So I was like, all right,
to the high seas.
I was like, I think I'll put this on the list of like facial hairs that I think I can wear
yeah.
normally, you know.
What's the craziest facial hair you've had, Keegan, besides what you're currently rocking?
Yeah, I wasn't sure what to go today. I have been doing more like the Chris Pratt Guardians lately. And then today I shaved it like this because I did have like almost a full beard this morning. But I remember we met with a friend of ours, Erica, who was writing our book for us at the time. And she was like, "You're not Wolverine, Keegan." And I just had like the mutton chops. And that always sticks with me. So every once in a while, you'll see it on a video. You just see me like having mutton chops because I'm like, I'll just grow it out. It's fine. And then it gets to a point, and I'm like, okay, we'll shave it down. And I like just shave it so it looks even. And I'm like, it looks so much better. Why did I do that? You know?
I agree. Because I'm built like Wolverine, so I like rocking every once in a while I'll do that too. I'll just rock the chops. And then the it's, I don't know what you call it. I call it the Predator, if I'm being honest, because like that's kind of like how it shapes your mouth. Like he does.
My Predator. Okay.
Huh? Well, yeah. Okay. I see. Well, way different Predator here. I should have said Yautja. We'll call it the Yautja beard or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Wolverine has like the middle. It's like weird because he has like the middle shaved and the bottom shave. It looks like he just took the razor and went like this, like one straight line down, and then the chops on the side or whatever, like the chops, and it's like, what facial hair is? What is that? You just took a razor down the middle. So yeah, you're kind of missing stuff in the middle here, and like
he went through a car wash a little aggressively one day. You know?
Yeah, it's like, oh man, like someone just took an eraser and went right down the middle. But yeah, like that's like the Wolverine one or whatever they kind of rocks is like not really a lot here, just really choppy looking kind of stuff. But it's a good time. So yeah. I'm sad not everybody will get to ever feel that feeling of being able to try different characters while they're shaving their facial hair down.
What a wonderful deep dive on Young Guns 2 this is.
We got to answer the important questions. Everyone's talked about Young Guns 2, but no one's asked, how did Pat Garrett cut his mustache? I know we've asked about Superman. Yeah, Superman, they ask all the time, how did Henry Cavill do that? But we've never asked Pat Garrett. So before we get into like kind of final thoughts and stuff, there is talk about doing a Guns 3. We've kind of mentioned it here and there.
No.
And that's how I feel, because now you're getting into like this really weird like pseudo history, and I don't know, part of me is like, maybe it'd be kind of fun because then you kind of get some of the gang back together, but I think it's a rights issue that's held it back as far as like who owns the movie rights to Young Guns. And so I also think Emilio wants to do a movie with his dad first. I forget which movie he's trying to do with his dad, but yeah, they're trying to do Young Guns 3. It's going to follow, I guess, the Brushy Build story, which I don't know if you guys have ever read Brushy Build's book, but it makes Forrest Gump not look fantastic because he's just like literally in all these like historical events. He's like riding with Pancho Villa, and then the next day he's with, Theodore Roosevelt, and then he's
just like random.
Yeah. Oh. And then he's in the Horse Theft Association. and then he leaves for 2 years, but they're still paying him for 2 years. So, but it feels like we are not on board with the Young Guns 3.
I think what's holding it back isn't a right issue. I think what's holding it back is it's a terrible idea.
The film gods itself are like, don't do it.
Yeah. Well, like, have you seen For All Mankind, the TV show on Apple?
No.
Basically, the premise is it's about what would have happened if the Russians had gotten to the moon before the U.S. If the space race had never ended, right? And so it's this kind of like alternate reality. And each season jumps forward in history. So the first season takes place when the moon landing happened, and then they jump forward, like I think it's like 20 years or so. But they keep the same cast and the same characters, and now they're older. But the problem is, every season it then jumps forward like 30 or 40 years, and now like in the most recent season or the season before that, now like all the characters are like in wheelchairs, like most of them are dead, and now it's like a whole new series of people they're trying to introduce, but they weren't the people who you first saw in the narrative, like as it's going forward, so you don't really care about the characters anymore. So it's that same issue, right? Where again, we're talking about sequelitis, right? Characters are too old; they're in completely different places in life. But also, I mean, the second movie is the hypothesis in itself of what would have happened if Billy the Kid, didn't get killed by Pat Garrett, and then the third movie would be a hypothesis of a hypothesis. It's tennis ball.
I mean, realistically, yeah, like that's exactly how that works.
So that was my question with watching it. How did they fake his death in this one?
They don't really
because
right? They just dig a grave or something.
Well, I mean, realistically, right? Like,
because it feels like Pat like shot him, right?
I don't think
Or
he did though. I think he was like, because you know what I mean? Because they're sitting there, he's having a conversation. Like, it's one of those things that like he's not looking at him, right? He's got his back turned, and it's like one of those things that like if you think about it to some degree, at least in my brain or whatever, right? I would never shoot a man in the back, like just let alone if he's not, you know what I mean? If he's unarmed, whatever kind of thing, like I'm not gonna shoot this guy in the back because it's like that's just not an honorable thing to do. And then, like I said earlier, like your reputation and your word is like really all that you had back then, right? And they were still honorable men to some degree. So I think like realistically, it was one of those things that maybe he shoots, but he just doesn't shoot him. You know what I mean? Like it's one of those things, or if he does, he wings them, right? Just gets some little graze or something like that, or whatever, and then he's essentially free to go. Because I mean, like realistically, you can, if you're Pat or whatever, you're like, yeah, I shot Billy the Kid. Like you did. I didn't say I killed him. I said I shot him. Like you kind of play like with words or whatever kind of thing. But like I think realistically, that's kind of what happened. Is he goes, okay, well, I've literally gunned down every one of our other friends, whether he did or not, right? Like it's, obviously some of this is historically hypothetical, but yeah, like like it's like, okay, well, do I really want to be the guy that puts the nail in the coffin on Billy the Kid? Do I want to be that guy, kind of thing? Or even like he says, he's like, man, I loved that guy, like as an old man, right? He's like, man, I loved him, or whatever. Just I think realistically in my brain, I think that's how that works, right? As you go, I don't want to shoot my buddy. First of all, I don't want to shoot my buddy, but second of all, I don't want to shoot him in the back while he's unarmed. So that's where I'm sitting with that one.
Jor-El, what's your take on that scene?
I think they kind of leave it open-ended, right? Like it seems like and this is again why I think the third movie is a bad idea, because at the end of this movie they kind of say that this guy had this story that he said he was Billy the Kid, but they don't say like, and then Billy the Kid lived on for many years, right? So they kind of leave it open-ended. So I think they do an okay job there. They don't answer the question of how did he do it, but I don't know if that's what the movie's about, so I think it's okay. And again, they're just trying to tell a very specific story. So
yeah, see, I just focus on the wrong thing sometimes. I just sit there and I'm like, how did he escape that?
Every movie. Well, that's me with the beard. Why do you? With this? But with any piece of art, right? There's certain things you can buy into and certain things you can't. And I think whether or not you enjoy it is, do you have a good time, but also are you able to buy into that?
Yeah, because the way I was watching it, I was like, okay, so he just pretends to shoot him, but then when they're doing the whole like mock funeral or whatever it ends up being, it's almost like he doesn't know Billy is alive because he looks surprised that his horse is gone.
Mm.
And so I was like, I'm so confused now. I don't know. That's just me.
Right. See, but I mean, like even then, like it was one of those things that, even that last line there was, I never stole nobody's horse from a guy I didn't like or whatever, right? Like it just so and I think that's why, like to some degree, it was that, and yeah, and maybe you're right on him, like looking kind of surprised or whatever, of being like, son of a bitch stole my horse. That maybe he didn't know or something like that.
Like he writes himself very scared. Like I feel like if he made it up, he would have wrote like this big, outrageous like gunfight. Like he pulled, so I pulled.
There were 12 horses and 15 guns.
Yeah. Yeah, but instead he's like, I was scared. I was afraid. I didn't know, but I knew if I didn't shoot him first, I was gonna die. So I was, kind of that stuff. So I always just kind of viewed him writing the book as trying to get his story out, because there was some rumors that they did it in the wrong way, or they lured Billy in using his girlfriend and tied her up. That's kind of some of the rumors that were getting started around that time frame. I definitely think he died, though. If that's what we're getting at. He's dead. He's in New Mexico.
by now, or
bringing him out. Here he is.
All right, special guest tonight. Let me bring him on, Billy the Kid. All right, so Jor-El, final thoughts on this movie, Young Guns 2.
I liked it. I enjoyed it. I thought it was, I think I mentioned this when we talked about Whiplash, where I like movies that don't have a lot of extra fluff. So I thought it was tight. It did its thing. Would I be like, oh my God, you got to see this movie? Young Guns 2, Estevez, where's all this prosthetic makeup? No, I wouldn't do that.
Yeah, I'm gonna follow the same line of thinking here of like, it's pretty good on the pacing. It's definitely got more action than the first one. Like Jor-El said earlier, it's like the first one was the lead up, right, and then this one's kind of the story or whatever, right? Like, yeah, it overall, like I rather enjoyed it for the first time seeing it, right? I think definitely it is going to be like on a rewatch of like I'm going to watch the first movie, then the second one, so I can kind of get real accurate, like back to back like accounts or whatever, right? To definitely like see the differences, just because that like makes me curious now. Since I was like, man, I feel like it was a test, and I was like, oh man, I failed that test. Now I gotta go back and figure this answer out. But overall, I thought it was great. I still thought it was a pretty good movie. It's one of those things like after watching that though, like I can tell you that they don't make a lot of movies like that anymore. Like even if it was a sequel and it wasn't the like better than the first one, or because I mean rarely are sequels better than the first one. Yeah, it was one of those things. I don't think it was bad by any means. I think it was still pretty solid, even with like the historical inaccuracies and the changes and all that kind of stuff.
I mean, the first one's got tons of historical inaccuracies. I think if you're coming here for a historical,
oh no, yeah, it's I didn't come here for accuracy. I came here for a good time, and that's what it is at the end of the day. So if you haven't seen it or whatever, I would definitely I'd give it a shot. But yeah, it's one of those things that yeah, give her a look-see.
I always kind of was on that hill. I think with our author friend John LeMay, who said Young Guns 2 was better than the first one. And I don't know if it's just because it stuck out better to me as a kid, or I saw it at the right age, kind of like going back to what we were saying earlier. So I wasn't sure going into it how I would feel, especially because I knew the story of this one was the Brushy Bill story, and how would I feel. But overall, I thought it did a really good job, and I think it holds up really well, even, barring the historical inaccuracies. I think story-wise and character-wise, I think it's a better movie. We see the characters fleshed out a little bit better, I believe, especially with Billy. And Billy's more of the forefront, whereas first one I think was more of Kiefer's. Doc Skurlock was more of the main character in that one. The only thing that I was bummed out was Lincoln in this one was that film ranch, which is cool. You see a lot of westerns. But in the first one, it was it Carrillos? It's right outside Santa Fe. But if you go there, you can see, they even to this day, they have like Tunstall and all those stuff
All
up on
the
the
stuff they
wall
put up.
still.
Yeah.
So you can go around and see it. And so I was kind of bummed they didn't use that as Lincoln again, and I kind of just chalked it up to the new director or whatever. But I think it holds up, really well. Jor-El, what would you rate and recommend this?
Let me go back and do some revisionist history, and let's say I rated the first movie like C plus or something. I think I might rate this B minus.
I give it a B7. Yeah, as that's my rating right there. B7. We're gonna mix these up here. No, yeah, we're bingo. We're playing bingo now, baby. But no, it's one of those things that I don't know. And here's the thing is like I'm not super big on like westerns, right? And I'm not gonna put this in the category of like actual western. You like westerns, Drew? Yeah. So I'm not the biggest fan of westerns, right? So it's one of those things like this isn't my type of movie generally. However, I do like Emilio Estevez and Lou Diamond Phillips, Kiefer, and you know what I mean, like the whole cast, really, right? Because I'm pretty sure this is like one of these movies where a lot of these guys got their break from and stuff like that because it's real early in their careers. Yeah, because I think Kiefer Sutherland did The Boys and then this and then Young Guns. But anyways, overall, it's one of those things like I give it about just a solid B. Like it's not a bad movie. So I guess a B would be what we'll say 7.5 out of 10. It's a solid movie, like overall, right? Like there's nothing that I was like, no, I hated that. Like there wasn't anything in there that I was like vehemently like against. Like, no, didn't like that choice. That was a terrible choice. Not like a lot of the movies and the stuff that we have today or whatever, right? Where especially for like a sequel, because there's a lot of there's a lot of choices that I'm like, that was a terrible choice. If you don't believe me, go back and watch our deep dive of The Crow. Terrible choices all over the place. So this movie had none of that, right? And granted, it was made in the 90s and it was a sequel, but yeah, overall, like I said, I give it a B. I suggest people watch it. It's if you like the first one and you want to finish finish the story or whatever, I would definitely go and give it a whirl. You might not be too disappointed or whatnot. Yeah, so for me, I give it a B overall. I'd watch it again, obviously. I would definitely show it to people if they like westerns or anything like that, or kind of like Billy the Kid. I'm sure they'd probably be like, well, that's not right, but it's still a fun story, still a good time.
I might have been doing that the whole time, like, oh, that didn't happen, that didn't happen, that didn't happen.
Oh, dude, Keegan, I imagine that like a lot of the historical people, when they watch these movies with stuff like that, are like me when I watch military movies. Drives me absolutely insane. Just because it's one of those things. I was like to this day, I absolutely love Top Gun and Maverick, but the military person in me goes, yeah, that first movie, about 10 minutes in, no, dude would be kicked out. Like, sorry, like that, these movies wouldn't exist. I was like, this, yeah, especially like with Maverick when he was like, oh yeah, it's just stolen F-15 or whatever to go flying around. That would not have been, that dude would have been arrested faster than I don't know what. Like that dude would have been on the ground, on the flight line, in handcuffs, just because I know how it works. And it's like, yeah, the inaccuracies are crazy to me. And drive me nuts sometimes in those military movies. And it's like, but I get it, right? It's a movie. It's made to entertain. It's not made to be right all the time. So yeah, I feel the same way of like, wrong. That guy's got an Air Force uniform on with an Army name tape. What the hell is going on over here? Like, that's not the right rank. Like, you're driving me nuts. Yeah, so I would do the same thing. That's how it works, man. But yeah, I'm definitely with you on that one. So,
but a lot of more of the historical inaccuracies, like I don't know, Tom Folliard's age. Obviously, that's just because of happenstance how they wrote the first one. Not having Charlie Bowdry die and Kiefer's, Doc Skurlock die there. Again, it's more just because of how they they kind of wrote themselves into a corner, and so you can forgive it because for the most part, Billy's story, I think, gets the message across. Jane obviously didn't exist, but gives us the scene we talked about. Oh, we forgot to talk. There is a John Bon Jovi cameo in this one, much like Tom Cruise cameoed in the first one.
The first one.
But yes, in the pit gel when the mob comes and the guy comes up, one of them's John Bon Jovi,
Like
he
one
gets-
of the
one of the prisoners, as is John Fusco, the writer, is one of the prisoners.
interesting.
Yeah, see. But for me overall, it did enough that I can forgive all the other inaccuracies, because as far as a story and just enjoying it as a piece of entertainment, I really enjoy it. I still think it's better than the first one. And I don't know if that's just me and when I saw it, or it feels more timeless because the music isn't as 80s, like heavily 80s as the first one. But I think overall 7.5. I think it's the better of the two. Maybe I'm gonna get cut out of the Billy the Kid groups now. I don't know, but it's out there now. I said it.
Ooh, it's out there. He floated it out there. Yeah, I said it. That was me.
It was me. I'll live with it. Jor-El, for anyone that has watched this and wants to see more of your projects, be it music or any of your film projects, what can they do to find you? And do you have any upcoming projects you can tell us about?
My band Reckless Ravens, that should be probably out in the new year, maybe a little bit later. That's what's going on. You can find me on Instagram at Vaasborg, which is just my last name, which is right there. Also, I've got a YouTube channel right now. If you're into rock climbing stuff, I'm mostly posting on there. You can DM me on Instagram or go on YouTube. And then my IMDb, if you just type my name in Google, you can find that.
And you've been in some other like non-Billy movies. Do you want to talk about that?
A movie called Soul Survivors, the true story of the Leonard Skinner plane crash, which is about Artemis Pyle, who's the drummer for Leonard Skinner, and his story of how he joined the band and then the plane crash that killed a bunch of members of the band, the famous plane crash. So it's his story. So I have a small part in that. I'm in a Disney movie that's on Disney Plus called Magic Camp that I have a very small role in. I voice a character on the Netflix show Scissor 7. I do the American voice for one of the recurring characters. You can find that on IMDb. And so that's some of the more bigger stuff.
Oh, lots of good stuff. We at some point we're going to talk the Survivor one, because we've watched a little bit of that one. Nolan, what about you? Any upcoming projects that you can talk about, or where can people find you currently? I know you got some stuff with Aaron and them.
Oh yeah. I mean, really just the same stuff that we've been doing, and it's one of those things that now, since I have tried to transition into doing a lot of other things instead of like working an actual job a lot of the time, I'm gonna be able to actually work on a lot of these projects a lot more. To include, like I said, getting actually going hard after the voice acting stuff like that. And then actual acting, I'm going to start trying to throw my stuff out there for, roles and parts and all that kind of stuff, or whatever I can kind of maybe get my hands on now that I have a lot of free time. I know in the next couple weeks, just because it is one of those things that now that I do have a bunch of free time, we're going to shoot a lot of Ghostbuster stuff that we've been wanting to shoot for damn near ever. And it's just one of those things that I'm sure Jor-El understands, that the timing and schedules and it's just sometimes it's an absolute mess, and sometimes things just don't line up or whatever, and that's why it takes 30 years to make a sequel. You just got to wait for the moons to align or whatever, and the Mayans said it'll be in 30 years is when the moons will align, so we can make this project happen or whatever, right? So we can make Guns 3. Yeah, so it's one of the things that got the stuff coming up and here shortly. But pretty much the same stuff as last time. Ghostbusters TX for our Instagram, and then the long one, the GBTXRRT on YouTube is where our stuff is at. Yeah, that's a mouthful. Have fun with that one. That one's ridiculous.
Like the sound that someone makes when they trip down the stairs. Oh, my camera died.
Uh-oh.
You have an awesome picture of me just smiling.
This is a good picture of you, though, just stuck.
God, it's like one of those things where like you pause a movie and then someone's tongue is like out like a weird position, and you come back and you're like, oh God.
Honestly, we should take a screenshot of this one, Jor-El, and that should be your new headshot right there. That's perfect.
I think in your new headshot, you need to be looking vaguely off screen, smiling.
But yeah, sorry. Anyways, so that's on, like I said, Instagram, YouTube, Texas Regional Response Team. You'll find us. But yeah, it's one of those things that maybe the next time we do this, Keegan, I'll have a lot more stuff for people and a little more projects out there. At least that's the hope, right? So now that I can actually, kind of stop half-assing everything and kind of whole-ass one thing, so we'll see what we can come up with in the next couple weeks.
So once again, we want to say thank you to both Jor-El and Nolan for joining us on another excellent episode of Culz Reviews Deep Dives on Young Guns 2 this time. And please make sure to go help support them and check out all the projects they are working on. I'll make sure to put all the links you need to know in the description below. But until next time, guys, for more Culz Reviews Deep Dives, click that link to your left. For more about us here at Culz Paranormal, click that link to your right. And don't forget to hit that like and give us a subscribe. And let us know, going into 2025, what is a movie you'd like us to deep dive review? Tell us in the comments below.